Welcome to Mother-Daughter Projects. I'm Steph, and I built a trailer. Now you may be wondering, why do you need a trailer? Well, Mom and I have been wanting to haul full 4x8 sheets of plywood from the hardware store forever, and now we can finally do it because this Harbor Freight trailer is actually fully 4x8, so we'll be able to hold our lumber perfectly on here. Now we've been wanting to get a trailer for a long time, but the biggest thing holding us up was where are we going to put the trailer when we're not using it? So when we found out that you could get a trailer that folds, that was a game changer. And I'll say I've never built a trailer before, never done car work, so I'm a very beginner. I did a lot of research online, watched a lot of videos, and so I'm going to share everything I learned about doing this. And I also have a car guy friend named Steven who actually has one of these trailers. He's had it for 10 years, and so he was able to answer a lot of my questions throughout the process and help me troubleshoot some stuff we had with the wiring. So I'll share all of that with you. Here are all the parts of the Harbor Freight trailer. Make sure you have plenty of space to assemble this and room to flip it over as you progress through the steps. When you buy the trailer, it comes in two boxes, one with the frame and the other with the wheel parts. This is the trailer we're assembling today. Harbor Freight sells a few different trailers, but we went with the one that's just over 1,000 pounds capacity, as it will be plenty for hauling lumber. Before I got started, I read the manual a few times and watched a few different YouTube videos on the subject. Then I organized all the screws and parts. Take note that there are two taller screws, so make sure you put those aside with the other oddball screws. The manual is pretty straightforward with the frame assembly. One note, each part is numbered in the manual, so I actually added those numbers with a sticky note to each of the parts to make sure nothing got out of place. I laid everything out, then started to add the screws. The majority of the screws are 17 millimeters. I used a socket wrench and a wrench to tighten them all down. I would recommend adding all the screws loose first, then tightening everything. But you want to make sure everything is square before you tighten it. Check and recheck to make sure this is right. The pictures in the manual are a little hard to interpret sometimes, so just double check everything before you move on. A few notes here, the bolt for the middle rails go through the silver bracket and then into the rail. And make sure you put the hinges in the right direction, as one side is more raised than the other. And also note that one of the bolts goes through the hinge and then that also secures the rail. To secure the bottom bolts, I actually had to raise the trailer just a little bit, and I used whatever I had around the workshop. Most of the time we were using Rockler bench cookies, which we use a lot when we're woodworking. This is the front of the trailer. Next, I attached the tongue assembly, which is what attaches the trailer to your car. Take note of the tow bar with the writing on it and make sure you don't put that upside down. This is a close-up of the hardware that I just attached. The L latches are actually used because they will be removed each time you fold the trailer. Everything else here is pretty straightforward. Again, you'll need to raise the trailer to tighten the bolts. Now it's time to assemble the rear bed rail. I put everything in place with loose bolts, then secured everything down. Next, I connected the two parts together. The two bolts in the middle will need to be removed each time the trailer is folded. Here's a close-up of the rails that I numbered based on the numbering system in the manual. With the structure assembled, it's time to flip it over and work on the wheels. And here's a quick close-up of those hinges. This is how the trailer is able to fold for storage. We thought it would be a challenge to flip ourselves, but it really was not at all. Flipping it on its side made it really easy. The next step is to assemble the spring hanger / caster assembly. A big note here, remember, this has been flipped, so left is right and right is left. Being dyslexic, this stumped me for a few moments until I added some sticky notes as a reminder. Once you get right and left correct, it's pretty straightforward. This is the step where you use the longer bolts and 2 carriage bolts. Also, take note of where the carriage bolts go, as those will need to be removed each time you fold the trailer. All of these use the 17mm socket. You're going to need more height in order to put the caster assemblies in place. We had a couple of cinder blocks that were a good height, so we placed the trailer on top of those with some microfiber cloth in between to help protect the trailer finish. To attach the casters, the nuts use a 14mm wrench. This was a bit tricky, but I found if I held the caster in place with needle nose pliers, Mom could tighten the nut. Then these attach with the regular 17mm bolts. Next is the fender assembly. A big note here is in this picture you can see the holes are closer to one side than on the other side, so the fender bracket should face towards the closer side. The springs get placed next and the axle on top of those. The U-bolts secure the axle in place. This is a little tricky to get, so make sure you use the shortest socket you have. I tightened everything up once it was in place and then moved on to prepping the wheels. There's a dust cap on the front of the wheels that needs to be removed. We stuck a metal rod through the back side to pop out the dust cap from the front. Then we removed the hub assembly from the wheel. I didn't have a metric socket big enough, but I used a 13/16 socket and that worked. I'm going to pause here and share one note. I've seen some conflicting information about the grease that comes on the bearings on these wheels. Some say that this is shipping grease and must be fully removed and new grease added. Some say this is sufficient grease for these bearings. The manual makes it sound like this grease is sufficient, and I double checked with Steven and he said this looked correct. So I didn't add any extra grease, but the manual does mention how to repack the bearings when that's necessary. And this is the hub assembly. The manual does mention adding grease to the back side of the hub, which I'm doing here, and then it just slips onto the axle. And you'll need to give it a little push here to get it into place. Then a flat washer goes into place. Screw the castle nuts tightly onto each spindle, then back the castle nut off slightly so the hub can move freely. Insert a cotter pin through the castle nut. I watched a few videos on this and found out that you want to have the long end of the cotter pin facing up and get it securely in place, and then bend the cotter pin around the front of the spindle. The other end can be pushed back a tiny bit and the dust cap can go back in place. I placed the tire back on the hub assembly and hand tightened the lug nuts, and the manual states the lug nuts need to be torqued to 85 to 90 feet-pounds. Okay, so I had no idea what that meant, but I talked to Steven and he informed me that I need a torque wrench, which I borrowed from him, and a torque wrench has a dial on it so you can actually set the exact feet-pounds that you need, and it will click once you've reached that when you're tightening the lug nuts. I watched many videos on this and know what the click's supposed to sound like, but I'll tell you, I was never actually able to hear that when I was tightening the lug nuts. I tightened them as much as I could and could not tighten them any farther. My dad even tried and he couldn't tighten them any farther. So hopefully you'll have some better success with a torque wrench. I did run this by Steven and he said if I couldn't tighten them anymore, then they were probably pretty well set. Next, it was time to turn the trailer back over. We enlisted the help of my dad this time, as the trailer has been getting heavier and heavier with each step. And we found it was not a huge deal to flip it over, and guess what? It rolls! So here is the trailer. We happened to find our Gorilla ladder stools were the perfect height to hold the tongue upright. And lastly, we just needed to add the coupler and chain, and this was very straightforward. The front screw is where the chain gets added, and that is how it's secured to the trailer. get started, I wanted to show you a quick layout of how the wiring looks right now, because this is how the wiring works. Here at the back tail light, you can see I put black covering over the wiring to help protect it, and you can see it is working. And this is actually grounded right here at the bottom. It's grounded to, the light is grounded to the trailer frame right here. The wiring is fed through the trailer frame, and right here is some excess wire, which we'll talk about in the future, and it has to do with the trailer folding. And I do have some metal clips here. These are actually trailer clips for doing this exact thing, for securing the wire in place, so I have those along the way. And you'll also see some white zip tie holders. Those are little plates that are double-sided tape that just kind of hold that wire in place as well. This is the side light that is grounded to the trailer yet again. Here is some excess wire for when the trailer's folded, and I again have that black cover on it. And here's the first ground on the tow bar. And then we just repeat that process on the other side of the trailer. You can see I'm using some of those metal trailer clips again. And then here is the side light again, grounded to the frame with those zip ties all around. So I went between zip ties and the metal clips to hold the wiring in place. And then on that back tail light, again, the same thing. I used that black wire cover, and then I grounded the back lights to the frame. In the first video, we left off at adding the bracket for the tail lights. They use the same hardware that was used pretty much for the whole frame, which uses a 17mm socket. The tail lights come with the hardware already included, so you just unscrew the nuts here, and it fits on to the bracket. And the other side is the same, except it also gets the bracket for the license plate. And here is the side light. It comes with the hardware, and it just secures into place. This is the 4-wire trailer wiring that is included with the trailer kit. Something that was not clear to me at first is the 4-pin connector had the wire harness connector plug already attached. Because our car already has the wiring harness installed, we did not need that part, and we disconnected it. It was a pretty strong connection, so off camera Mom helped me unplug it. Here's a close-up of the plugs. This part you don't need, and this part is what will connect to your car wiring harness. And this is what it looks like to connect this part to your car wiring harness. Next, I place the 4-pin connector through the trailer coupler. You want to make sure you leave as much wire as possible to connect to your car and have slack for when you make turns. You don't want your wiring coming unplugged. Before I do all that, I want to protect these wires a little bit, so I'm using some mesh tubing. So I just cut it in half, and then I burn the edges to keep that from fraying. This has to be done before all of the wiring is done, because it has to be fed through the very end of the cables up to the front. And off camera, I added the white wire into that bundle. Next, I ran the wires through the trailer, temporarily securing them with tape so I could see where I wanted everything placed. The tricky thing to all this is I need excess wire in 3 places so the wiring doesn't get pinched when the trailer is folded. In the end, I decided not to cut off any wiring and just added all the excess in these 3 different spots. I have more wire than I need, but I figured if I need to make repairs in the future, I have some extra wire right here. Next, I added the first grounding wire to the tow bar. It's a bare wire, so I added a ring terminal to give it an easy way to secure to the trailer using a self-tapping screw. Then I started to secure the wire to the frame, here using zip ties. I also used trailer frame wire clips. The pointy part actually goes on the trailer and the smoother part holds the wire. A few of these were actually included with the trailer kit, but I also bought a pack on Amazon. The ground wire for the taillights comes with the ring terminal already connected. Here I placed it right behind the light. This ultimately did not work for me, but I'll explain this later. I secured the nuts with an 11mm wrench. To wire the taillights, the kit includes wire nuts, but I want a stronger connection. I happened to see a YouTube video about these butt terminals with solder inside, so that seemed like the perfect solution. I removed the wire nuts I had for testing purposes and found the right size connector. The wires need to interlock when placed in the connector. And then I use a heat gun to melt the tube and solder inside. I use my helping hand stand to hold the wire. I repeated this with all the taillight connections. I'll put a link in the description to the video I saw about these connectors, as he goes into more detail about why these are a superior connection. Now back to the front of the trailer. I left a lot of excess wire near the front. This is where the tow bar will actually fold down when I'm folding the trailer, so I wanted to make sure there was plenty of wire to do that. I protected and cleaned it up a bit with wire wrap. To wire the side lights, I first stripped the white wire. I added a ring terminal to this. The side lights connect into one wire on each side. To do this, I'm using a knife to separate a section of the wires, and then I slid the quick slice connector onto the brown wire. It goes into the first section, and then the brown wire from the side light goes into the other part of the connector. I use needle nose pliers to press down the middle section that slices into the cables to connect them. Then this part goes over top. I use a self-tapping screw and impact driver to attach the ground to the frame. Actually, the big issue I had with this was grounding. So everything needs to be all the lights need to be grounded to the frame, the metal frame here, in order for them to work. And so I originally had an issue where the lights weren't working, and our friend Steven came over and actually helped me troubleshoot. He brought over a multimeter, and we tested different areas of the trailer to see where it was making a good connection. Now this is where the ground is supposed to be on the tail lights, but as you can see, the hole is an oval and not a perfect circle, just like the screw is. So the screw is actually not able to touch the bracket. We tried adjusting it over a little bit, and we still weren't getting a good ground connection. So like you see right here, we ultimately decided to just bypass that whole bracket and screw the ground into the trailer frame. And even before we finished screwing it in, the lighting started working. I added the coupler onto the trailer ball, plugged in the wiring harness, and it works. Then I moved on to securing all the wires like I showed at the start of the video. Today we're going to install the deck or bed of the trailer and experiment with a back-end rail idea. For the deck, we're using a 4x8 foot sheet of pressure-treated plywood from the Home Depot. We got it cut exactly in half at the store, as each section of the trailer is 4x4. You'll notice each corner of the trailer has a bolt head sticking out. We have two ideas to deal with this. One is just to cut a corner of the plywood off of these spots, or another idea is to make an indentation on the bottom side of the plywood to account for the bolt head, which we're doing here. Mom made a paper template of where the bolt head is placed, marked it on the plywood, and I used a Forstner bit to remove the plywood in these sections. We put each piece in place to test the fit. We had to make a little bit of adjustments, but were able to get it to fit. Next, the hinge that allows the trailer to fold is in the way just a little bit so the plywood can't fit underneath. So I marked a little indentation on the plywood and I cut it out with a multi-tool. Next, I got under the trailer to mark each hole for where the plywood will attach to the trailer frame. In order to get a good marking, I cut a pencil short to fit into the rail. The hardware we're going to use to attach the plywood to the frame are 3/8" carriage bolts, lock washers, and hex nuts. We got galvanized as this will be stored outside and want to help prevent rust. We drilled 3/8" holes in all the spots, and Mom cleaned that up with a sander. Then we place the carriage bolts in each hole. Then we put it on the frame. It was difficult to get them through the hole, so we clamped the plywood to the frame and lifted up the back half so we could attach the lock washers and nuts. You can see we're using a hand ratcheting wrench to attach these, and this proved to be very time consuming. The reason we went with carriage bolts is they have a square neck that resists turning when fastened into place. So what we're doing here is allowing the carriage bolts to make an indentation into the plywood, thus holding it better and making it more secure. The day before we did this, I happened to notice that Ryobi had just come out with a cordless ratcheting wrench, so we headed to Home Depot to buy one to try on the second half of the trailer. We propped up the trailer so I could mark the holes on the plywood, then I followed the same process of drilling 3/8" holes through the plywood. This time Mom cleaned up the holes with a rotary tool and we put the plywood back in place adding the carriage bolts, clamped it, and lifted it so I could add the nuts. And a shout out to my dad for helping with some of the heavy lifting here. This Ryobi cordless ratcheting wrench was a game changer. It made it so much easier to secure the carriage bolts into the plywood. With that done in less than half the time of the first one, we put the trailer back into place and customized it a little bit by giving it a name. And yes, this will be referred to as the Great Trailer, which is a nod to my 2 greyhounds. So here's a look at it all done. After a few weeks, there were 2 concerns I had about this. 1, the bolts sticking up just a little bit, and 2, I wanted to seal the plywood so it extends the life. So it was back under the trailer for me, but this time we invested in a creeper from Harbor Freight. This made it so easy to get under the trailer and to move all around with ease. And again, the cordless ratchet made this really easy and fast. With the plywood removed, I placed it on the ground and again, used the Forstner bit to drill into each screw hole. To make sure they were nice and straight, I'm using the Rockler drill press attachment, which has stops so I was able to get the same depth on every hole. Next, Mom stained the wood. This is leftover Olympic solid stain that we used on my outdoor furniture a year ago. Now this was a few weeks after we had purchased the pressure treated plywood, so it had plenty of time to dry out before staining. When you purchase pressure treated wood, you can feel that it's damp from the chemicals that they use and it needs time to dry out before painting or staining. Mom stained both pieces of plywood front and back so we had no issues with warping. Again, we waited a few weeks before we put it back under the trailer because we wanted to make sure it was nice and dry. We just repeated the process for getting the plywood back on the trailer. One thing you'll notice is we struggled a little bit to get the bolts back into the back end of the trailer. But when we put the bolts back into the front end of the trailer, they dropped in very easily. So there could be 2 reasons for this. 1, Mom used the rotary tool to clean up the holes in the front part of the trailer, or 2, we used the ratcheting wrench on this section. Whichever it was, I would recommend doing both of these on your trailer. Again, the creeper made this easy to get under the trailer and the ratcheting wrench made quick work of reattaching the plywood. Now, we have been asked why we didn't add wood rails all around the trailer, and our answer is because we don't know exactly what type would be best for how we're going to use the trailer in the future. I've been looking at a lot of different trailer wall ideas and also spotted some ideas of trailer walls I see on the road. But the main reason we got this trailer is to haul lumber from the hardware store, mainly 4x8 sheets of plywood. So we decided to start with just the back rail for the trailer, and if we see the need in the future, then we'll make the other 3 sides. We bought a 2x6 8-foot board and cut it in half. Then we added 2 2x4s into the brackets on the back of the trailer and glued and screwed the top 2x6 into place, then did the same with the bottom. The space between the bottom 2x6 and the plywood bed is the same thickness of 3 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, as this is how many sheets of plywood we think we'd get at one time. For some reason, the brackets on this trailer are just a little too small to fit easily a 2x4 into. So I measured the height of the bracket, and then I cut a little indentation out on each of the 2x4 so it will fit easily into the brackets. Then I drilled a hole for the hardware to secure it to the trailer. And if you're wondering, we didn't go with pressure treated wood for this section because we don't intend to use this piece all the time and it will be stored indoors. But we did paint it with an outdoor paint that we had left over from painting my house and Mom's mailbox. Lastly, I used the ratcheting wrench to secure the rail to the trailer. We used bolts we already had on hand. And also, we didn't talk about this, but the trailer jack, we actually added that to the front of this trailer here, and that we picked up at Harbor Freight, and it's great because we're able to get the trailer to be a consistent height and not have to put something under the nose of the trailer when it's not attached to a car. The reason we bought this trailer was because it folds up for storage. So today we're gonna fold it up and store it. Let's get started. There are 6 bolts that need to be removed, so I'm going to get under the trailer easily using our Harbor Freight creeper. There are 2 bolts in the middle that I'm using our Ryobi cordless ratchet to easily remove. And there are 2 carriage bolts on either side by the wheels. Here I am removing the first one, and the second one is right by the fender, which happens to be an issue on this side when removing the bolt. We've tried adjusting the fender but are unsure why it's so difficult on this side. But we got it removed and moved on to the other side. Again, here's the side carriage bolt, and here is the location of the carriage bolt right above the axle. You can see here the carriage bolt fits into a square notch in the frame. Carriage bolts have a square neck and smooth bolt head. Now we're able to fold the back half of the trailer onto the front. In our installing the deck video, we countersunk the bolts attaching the deck to the frame, so now the trailer halves fold completely flat. The manual says to bungee cord the 2 halves together, so that is what we're doing here. But our friend Steven has another method that he uses to secure the halves using a piece of 2x4 in the brackets and screwing it into place. We might switch to this method in the future. We were going to store the trailer in Mom's garage, but decided this little alcove in Mom's backyard will work perfectly as it has a nice overhang to protect the trailer from the elements. So we scooted it into place, and one thing we want to mention is it's pretty heavy. Mom and I tried doing this together but were unsuccessful, so my dad is stepping in to help lift this into place. I started by removing the trailer dolly from the coupler and moved to the side to help Dad lift the trailer. This takes a lot of upper body strength, but I'm unsure actually how much it fully weighs. Once it's upright, it's supported by 4 casters. These casters seem a little flimsy, so I wouldn't do a lot of moving once the trailer is upright. Next, we remove the R-clips and L-latches that hold the tongue assembly in place. Then we slowly folded the tongue assembly down, making sure to release the extra wire so they didn't get pulled out. Again, this takes steady upper body strength. But here it is all folded up, and you can see it does not take up much space. Lastly, we covered it with a large tarp to help protect it even more from the elements. Then we put a ratchet strap on to hold the tarp in place. Here's a good view of the trailer underneath the house eaves. And here are all the other trailer supplies that we have stored in our storage area of the garage. One thing to note, Mom and I cannot put the trailer upright together, which is a little limiting. So in the future, we might just fold the trailer up but not put it upright and cover the trailer with a tarp. It will take up more space, but it might be more accessible to us. The nice thing about this trailer is there's a lot of options for uses and storage.
Number 1, what are you going to use your trailer for? Well, we got our trailer so we could haul lumber, especially 4x8 sheets of plywood, because normally we'd have to get it cut in the store to fit in my Honda, but that's not always practical. So we went with the 1,000 working load, and which is we felt like would be enough for what we needed because we're not going to get a whole bunch at one time. They do sell one that is 1,500 pounds, so that may meet your needs a little bit better.
Number 2, what can your car tow? So that's something you want to consider, is figuring out if your car can even tow a trailer and what the weight of the trailer can be. So ours can tow, this is a CRV that we got a couple years ago, and that was a big deal to us. So we made sure it could tow, and it's 1,500 pounds is what it can do. And so our trailer works perfect for that. So double check that before you get a trailer.
And number 3, before you can do anything, you have to do some stuff to your car. When we bought this car a few years ago, we actually had them install this hitch apparatus right here. But at the time, we didn't know that you had to do something, attach this electrical harness. I don't know why they didn't tell us at the time that we needed this, but we didn't have that. So when we got ready to do the whole trailer thing, we realized we didn't have this part, so we took it back to the dealership and they put this on. And Steph will cover the cost of that later on in the video, and as you can imagine, it was fairly expensive. Now, Harbor Freight has a really good placard that's in the store, and it says what to know before you tow. And some of these things are on there, so there are things you need to know before you actually hitch it up and go.
Number 4, how are you gonna get home? So you wanna see how the trailer actually comes. And this one comes not assembled, it actually comes in 2 boxes, really easy to fit in the back of the CRV, and we didn't have to try to figure out how to haul it home or anything like that. So see how the trailer comes before it is purchased. And if you're considering getting a Harbor Freight trailer, in our store, you actually go to the very back of the store and there's these little take tabs, and you take one of those up to the front, you pay for the trailer, and then they'll bring the boxes out to the front and load in your car for you. So you just put them in your car and you're good to go. But you want to make sure you know how the trailer comes, if it comes assembled or not, so you know before you get to the store.
Number 5, be prepared to wait when you buy this. Now, it's not like going in and buying, a screwdriver and you're in and out in no time. It takes a little time to do the actual sale because there's some legal things that they have to do. And if you end up getting a cashier that's never done it before, they have to get a notebook out and figure out what they're supposed to do. It's okay, it works, it just takes a little time. Now, they're going to give you an official certificate that you need to hold on to. It's a legal document, it has a VIN number on it, and you're going to need your receipt. Both of the things you're going to need when you go to get your tag.
Number 6, you want to see if your state requires your trailer to be tagged, and we live in Florida and it does require it. So what you need to do is you want to make sure you bring that bill of sale and that certificate you got when you bought your trailer to your local tag office or DMV to get the tag for it. And I will tell you, it was very straightforward. We made an appointment online and we were able to get the tag that day, which I actually thought was going to be mailed to us. So we were able to get everything that day. So we actually hadn't even built the trailer yet, but since we had bought the trailer, we were able to get the tag. And the tag actually goes right here. This, by the way, is not a real tag. This is just for demonstration purposes. Our real tag's underneath, but it attaches to the trailer. I will say that it does not come with hardware to attach the tag to the trailer, so you will need to get that. But what I want to mention is this is pretty flimsy, and we've run into this a couple times, and so it kind of bent our license plate. So I got this little backer right here that can go to keep it a little bit more sturdy, keep your license plate sturdy. And I just got this on Amazon, so I'll put a link to that below if you want to get this. So just make sure your license plate is nice and secure.
Number 7, what exactly did we spend?
So when you think about getting a trailer, you got to consider all the items that you have to get, not just the trailer itself. So that's what we're going to talk about. The trailer itself was actually $350, and we got it on sale, so it's even cheaper than that. But that was the base price of the trailer. And then the plywood right here that we used to make the bed of the trailer, that price plus the hardware to attach it to the trailer was about $100. And the tag was $50, which we will need to renew each year for its registration. The extras, so we'll be sharing these in upcoming videos, but we got some extra stuff from Harbor Freight to go along with the trailer, and that was about $100 for those items. And then the hitch that Mom talked about earlier was about $400, although we don't have a receipt, so we don't know exactly the price, but we're pretty sure it's $400. And we got that at the dealership. And then the harness to do the wiring, so that to be able to have wiring run to the trailer, that was $275. So all in, it was $1,275. So a little over $1,000 for the trailer. Or all the things.
Everything.
That involve the trailer. So I'm pretty happy with that. And yeah, so that's just something to consider when getting your trailer, all the extra things. In past videos, we've shown how to assemble this Harbor Freight DIY trailer kit. Today, we're going to hitch it up and hit the road. Here I'm using the Harbor Freight 600-pound trailer dolly to easily move my trailer to the car. This can be done from a standing position with little effort. At the back of our CRV, I have my towing supplies. First, I'm going to lube the ball mount and secure it to the car trailer hitch with a hitch pin. This trailer hitch gel lube is made by 3-in-1 and will provide long-lasting lubrication with rust prevention. Using hitch lubrication reduces friction and wear between the ball and coupler as well as the hitch receiver. When we had the trailer hitch installed on this vehicle, it came with the ball mount, but it didn't include the trailer ball. This is due to the fact that different items you will tow will require different size balls. Make sure you get the right size ball hitch for what you're towing. In this case, we bought a 1 7/8 inch ball with a 3/4 inch shank diameter. This measurement is based on the size of the hole in the ball mount. I secured the hitch pin with the R-clip, lube the ball, then place the trailer coupler on top. Push down on the handle until the trigger locks into the slot. Pull up and down to make sure the hitch ball is fitting snugly in the coupler. Place the locking pin in R-clip to secure. Next, attach each side of the safety chain to the towing vehicle. Connect the wiring harness to the towing vehicle. Now everything is connected and it's time to review our checklist. These 12 before you use steps come straight from the Harbor Freight trailer manual. I also created a handy PDF of them that you can print out for yourself when prepping your trailer. Number 1, check tire condition and air pressure. These tires are supposed to be 60 psi, so I use my Ryobi battery-powered tire inflator to get them to the right psi. Number 2, make sure wheel lug nuts / bolts are properly tightened. Number 3, make sure hitch, coupler, drawbar, and other equipment that connect the trailer and the tow vehicle are properly secured and adjusted. Number 4, make sure wiring is properly connected, not touching the road, but loose enough to make turns without disconnecting or damaging the wires. Make sure all running lights, brake lights, turn lights, and hazard lights are working. Number 6, check that all items are securely fastened on and in the trailer. We have a metal trellis that we're delivering to a friend, so we're going to load that up. We're using ratchet tie-down straps to secure it to the bed. On one end of the strap is a hook that we place on the trailer frame. Then we pull the excess strap through the ratchet and secured it. The rest of the strap we rolled up and secured it to itself. I actually saw a useful video on how to do this on YouTube, which I will link to below. Then we repeated the process with the second strap. Number 7, make sure the trailer jack, tongue support, and any attached stabilizers are raised and locked in place. Number 8, check load distribution to make sure the tow vehicle and trailer are properly balanced front to back and side to side. You want to make sure the trailer is level with your vehicle. If not, you'll need a different ball mount or adjustable ball mount. Also, make sure your payload on the vehicle is evenly distributed from side to side with 60% of the load forward of the axle. You can see that better here when we rented a stump grinder from the Home Depot. This ramp was a separate purchase from Harbor Freight, which works great with this trailer. Again, we use ratchet straps to secure it with most of the weight forward of the axle. Number 9, check side and rear view mirrors to make sure you have good visibility. Here you can see a load of wood we took home from the Home Depot. Nothing moved. Number 10, check routes and restrictions on bridges and tunnels. I would also recommend thinking through your driving path. For example, to get to our Home Depot, we have many options, but we actually go a back way when we have the trailer connected so that we don't encounter any steep hills or sharp turns. Number 11, make sure you have wheel chocks and jack stands. Wheel chocks will be needed if you're on unlevel ground or need to unhitch the trailer. And as you saw, we have a jack stand that stays connected to our trailer. This is my trailer supply bucket that I keep with my trailer, so everything I might need is all together. I also keep the screws that are removed when the trailer is folded right in here. Number 12, check trailer for loose bolts and nuts, structural cracks, bends, or any other condition that might affect its safe operation. Do not use a trailer if even a minor damage appears. And now it's been 1 year, so I want to go ahead and repack the bearings on this trailer. So let's do it. First, we raise one side of the trailer high enough for the wheels to be off the ground. Once it could spin freely, we were ready to start. I started by removing the lug nuts using a 13/16 socket in my impact wrench. I went ahead and removed the dust cap as it was in the way of my impact wrench. This made quick work of removing the lug nuts, and they can be removed with the wheel in the air as this tool will not make the wheel spin. We follow the same process for both wheels, and I'm going to be cutting between footage from both wheels as I go through the process. Next, I remove the cotter pin using needle nose pliers, and I have new cotter pins to replace these. Next, I unscrewed the castle nut. Once I pulled the hub assembly forward, the flat washer and bearing came out. Do this slowly so it doesn't fall on the ground. I'm removing the hub assembly so I can remove some of the old grease so it's not too goopy inside for the next step. With most of the grease removed, I put the hub assembly back on the axle and place the flat washer and castle nut back on. This is the easiest way to remove the back bearing and grease seal from the hub assembly. To release the back bearing and grease seal, I'm going to forcefully pull the hub assembly forward a few times, and the washer will help push the bearing and seal off the back. And there it is. Sorry this footage is a little blurry, but apparently the camera focused on the fender during this entire time. This is the grease seal, and most people say this will get damaged when repacking the bearings, so I ordered new ones from Amazon. Here are all the parts just as they were coming off of the year-old wheels. Time to clean the old grease off. I first tried to remove it by hand, then I used brake cleaner to help remove the fine grease. Brake cleaner is formulated to remove grease, brake dust, brake fluids, oils, and other contaminants. The bearings were a little bit of a challenge to get clean as there was a lot of small areas where the grease hides, but I took my time and I think I got it all. And here is everything all cleaned up. And this is my pile of greasy, dirty rags. If you notice, I changed my gloves a lot as this is a very messy project. Next, I'm going to add new wheel bearing grease to the bearings and hub assembly. And to my surprise, the grease was red, which was helpful so I could tell the difference from the old grease that was blue. But it did at times look a little bit like a crime scene. I started by pushing the bearing into the grease on my hand to get the grease into all the parts of the bearings. I also added some grease inside the hub assembly. This is the back side, and now I'm placing one of the bearings inside. There are a front and back bearing on each wheel, and both are the same. A quick note, these are the old grease seals from the back of the wheels. The first one I completely broke, and the second one looks like I could probably reuse it, but I already have two new ones ready to go. I placed a new grease seal on the back of the bearing, and to make sure it went in completely straight, I placed a 2x4 on top and tapped it into place. And this is what it should look like. Oh, and I smoothed out that blob of grease. Time to reassemble the wheel. First, I wiped down the axle. Then I made sure to place the wheel assembly nice and straight on the axle. Then I pushed the front bearing into place and put the flat washer on top of that. Then screwed on the capsule nut. I tried to not over tighten it so the wheel could move freely, but also nothing felt loose. Here's my new cotter pin that I'm placing on the axle to hold everything secure. I used needle nose pliers to fold one end over the front and cut the longer part off. Then I put the dust cap back in place and the wheel back on. I hand tighten the lug nuts first. Then I use a torque wrench to torque the lug nuts to 85 to 90 foot-pounds. This is easier if you put the wheel back on the ground so it doesn't spin. I cleaned up the wheel and done. And it rolls. And it's all ready for our next trip, probably to Home Depot. And now it's been 1 year, so I want to talk about how we've been using it, where we've been storing it, and how it's held up. So let's get started. So in our last video, you saw that we folded up the trailer and we had it stored right here in this outdoor area. Well, this is how we ended up storing it. We found it was too annoying to fold up, and I was just tired of taking out the bolts that you have to whenever you want to fold it. So we ultimately just covered it with a tarp and left it in this area, and it's actually been fine. It hasn't really been in the way. So this is the first time I'm uncovering it in probably about 6 months. So I kind of wanted to see what state it was in because this is the longest we've let it sit. So I'm starting by putting it on the dolly, and I will tell you the dolly is something we bought early on with the trailer, and it is awesome. It makes it super easy to move the trailer around. And I just put up the jack stand, and let's take a look at how the trailer looks. So it looks like there's some maybe animal droppings on the back of it, and there's definitely some dust or dirt around the trailer and some leaves on it. So Mom is going to clean up those leaves, and I want to make sure it works. Here is our trusty CRV with the trailer wiring harness on the back. I'm not even going to hitch up the trailer because we're not taking this anywhere. I just want to make sure that the lights work. So I plugged it in and turned on the car. And the back lights work. Woohoo! Success. But the side lights are not working, so I want to get under the trailer to see if I can tell why they're not working. So as I mentioned, over the last year we have used the trailer a handful of times, but we've been storing it exclusively outside, and we have some pretty harsh conditions here in Florida. High humidity, lots of rain, and really hot temperatures. I was also told that if I store it outside, I would probably have mice or rats eat through the wiring, so I'm a little nervous about that. So I want to get on the creeper and take a look underneath to see what the wiring looks like. I will say the trailer jack that we added towards the end of this build really has come in handy to lift up the trailer, but I also love the trailer dolly because that makes it really easy to move, but the trailer jack just makes it really easy to sit in place. All right, so I'm getting on our Harbor Freight creeper to look under and see what I see under the trailer. And basically, it looks good. I'm just doing a survey and everything looks exactly how I left it. The wiring all looks good. Everything is still even bundled where I left everything. I don't see anything that looks like something animals kind of got into. There's definitely some corrosion starting on some of the bolts. So checking out the side lights, I don't see anything that looks obvious as the issue. The only thing that I'm thinking happened is the trailer came with splice connectors, and that's what that little blue square thing is. And that's how they have you wire in the side lights. And I'm suspecting that the splice wire didn't hold up and there's some issue with that. But with the rear lights working, I'm not overly concerned about the side lights. Although if you know the best upgrade from the splice connectors, let me know in the comments and I might go ahead and do that one day. And here's just a close-up of some of the areas where you can see some rust and some deterioration in some areas. Again, I'm not surprised. I'm not overly concerned with it, but this is basically what 1 year of wear and tear on the trailer and being stored outside looks like. But I'm really happy with the deck. It seems to be holding up, and I'm really glad that we painted it. This is a piece of pressure-treated plywood, and we painted it with an outdoor Olympic solid stain. How have we used the trailer in the last year? Well, we've used it exactly how we thought. We've taken it to Home Depot to get lumber. We've also got some tools from Home Depot, and it's worked perfect for that. We haven't used it as much as we expected because we did have some extended family things we needed to work through this year, so we didn't do as many big projects as we expected. Also, we now have access to a large van, so things we would have put on the trailer before, we can now put in that van. So the trailer has sat more than we've used it, but we still have used it. And speaking of that, something that I have found very helpful is the checklist I made last year. Basically, whenever we're about to use the trailer, I can go through all of the safety things before to make sure the trailer is ready to go. And one thing I learned is every time we use the trailer, we have to put air in the tires because they lose air pretty quick. But that's easy to do with our Ryobi power inflator. Now, what's the future of the trailer? Well, we're gonna keep it, even though we're not using it as much as we thought, because there's a lot of things we can do with the trailer. We can definitely still haul like awkward things that you can't really haul in a vehicle. Also, I'm getting into kayaking now, so I'm thinking of maybe making a kayaking trailer one day or a camping trailer. There's a lot of things you can do with this trailer, especially if you look online under Harbor Freight trailer. There's a ton of types of ways people have converted the trailers, so I'm excited to maybe do that one day, although we still like having it just as a flatbed. Now, will we fold it ever again? I don't know. It just turned out to be too hard to fold the trailer on our own. Mom and I couldn't do it easily on our own, and it was just annoying to get under there to remove the bolts. So I don't think we're going to be folding it. I'm not going to make changes to the wiring or anything where we couldn't fold it. I'm still, that's still a possibility. But so far, I don't have a desire to fold it. And it's been fine in the backyard. And so we're going to pack it back up and put it back where it was and put the tarp over it. And like I said, everything's been holding up pretty well. We'll see how long it lasts in this kind of Florida weather overall. So thanks for joining. If you want to see more projects from us, be sure to visit us at motherdaughterprojects.com.